Welcome to the Impactful Engineer Project. I'm Steve Maxey, and with my co-host and brother Jake, we are here to bring you guidance, fresh ideas, and the tools to help you become an impactful engineer.
Welcome to the Impactful Engineer Podcast. Our mission is to help you grow your engineering career and inspire you to pursue your full potential, not only as an engineering professional, but as a member of your greater community. I'm Jake Maxey. I'm a professional electrical engineer for an engineering consulting firm called Hallam ICS. I'm here with my brother Steve, who is a mechanical engineering manager in new product development for Klein Tools. Getting some housekeeping stuff out of the way, we do have a few episode types that we stick to. The first one is our most common episode type. Steve and I get on the horn here. We present a topic, we introduce the why and the how around it, and give some tips to inspire some action from you guys. The second type, occasionally we have quick solo episodes that Steve or I will immediately get down to the point, share an idea with you that we think is critical to growing your career. These can be high-level concepts that change your thinking or mold your mindset to more detailed topics to inspire specific action. So just a shorter type episode with one solid piece of advice. 3, whenever we feel like it, really, we'll bring on a guest. We try to find guests who are experts in their field that we think, when they share their perspective with you, will give you an edge in your career or give you something to work with. If you want a perspective on a specific topic, we do have an email for that, questions@impactfulengineer.com. You can send us anything you want. If it's good and appropriate, we just might talk about it. Also, if you learned something today, please share the show. It's the only way we can grow. Hopefully you find something great from today. All right, heading into the main episode here. We do have a guest today. This is a guest episode. Jim Schafer with Nenni Associates is with us today. I'll allow him to kind of fill in who he is and what he does, but I will tell you that he has a ton of experience in the engineering recruiting space. He has an awesome podcast that he'll tell you about. It's actually top 10%. I looked it up. I don't know if you know that. But Jim, welcome to the show, and thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me on, Jake and Steve. Appreciate it. Yeah, so as far as I'm really glad we connected on this, and just as far as my background, and thanks for the 10% podcast shout out. I had no idea until you looked it up and did a little bit of research. So now I can use that to market the podcast even more, right? That's really good stuff. But just kind of taking a step back. So our core business as an executive search firm, we specialize in the built environment, right? So anything that has to do with energy, efficiency, sustainability, and construction. So we have clients all across the spectrum, anywhere from energy services companies, MEP design engineering firms, building automation controls companies, as well as renewable energy organizations. And we help them find anywhere from like entry-level sales engineers, energy engineers, design engineers, all the way up to true executive level individuals and everywhere in between. So director level, vice president level. So that's a little bit about Nenni, boutique executive search firm specialized in this space. And then as far as the podcast, this was kind of an interesting wrinkle. About 4 years ago, everyone's got their COVID story, right? What they ate, what they did, what they didn't do, whatever, right? Everyone's got their own story. We're going to reflect back on that. For me, part of my story was starting a podcast. I'd always wanted to do it, probably a few years prior, 2016, 2017, I started listening to podcasts a lot, really got into it and learned a lot along the way. And I always told myself like, hey, you should start one. You should start a podcast. And then of course the ensuing excuse always came, well, you don't have time for that. You have a family, you have a job, you can't start a podcast. Fast forward to COVID, everything starts to slow down. There's not a whole lot of hiring, interviewing, and recruiting going on at that time. So all of my excuses were removed. I'm like, okay, you got time to learn how to do a podcast and you don't have any excuses anymore. So these are the conversations I'm having with myself. And the good part was when we started bringing guests on, high-level leaders from the space, guess what? They had more time. They had time too, right? Because COVID affected everybody. So I think we were able to get access to some folks that we normally wouldn't have. So that's kind of how it started, bringing on guests from the industry to talk about their vision, their mission, their values of their organization. We get to know them at a personal level. And then, of course, we talk about kind of the future of the industry. So we're, I think, 124 episodes in right right now and still counting, still going strong. And maybe we'll crack into the top 5% after we get this thing out there and recorded with your
There you go. Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah.
So
get to that
it.
200th episode. Let's go.
Got to keep going. It's there. It's within reach. So we're gonna just one episode at a time, right?
There you go. Yeah, Steve and I are approaching 100, which is what we told ourselves we were going to do, no matter what.
Yeah.
100.
Well, I started at 10. I was like, hey, just do 10. And then I just kept going.
Nice. Yeah, we like to take more than we can chew, I guess. The big goals. All right. I've been thinking, how do we take this access to you, right? Because you're an executive search professional. Kind of what the market is at any given time with recruiting and hiring, and you talk to a lot of people. And I think one thing we can bring to the audience is, what is your take on interviewing, right? Because you're going to be talking with aspiring engineers that are maybe 0 to 5 years in their career, all the way up. So what do you see out there that you'd like to give some advice on around, anything and everything interviewing?
Yeah. So I would, if I'm an engineer listening to this, I would really start to think like a hiring manager. And in my experience, and this is across any type of industry, this is really across any type of position, right? So whether you're junior, entry level, mid level, senior level, or whatever, I think there's 3 things that every hiring manager is interviewing for, whether that's consciously or subconsciously. Number 1 is, can you do the job? Do you have the skills and experiences to do the job, right? That's the first gate that we're trying to clear. And for engineering positions, it tends to be pretty binary, right? Do you have a PE or do you not? Do you understand how to design these particular MEP systems, or do you not, right? Steve, in your experience on the product side, you could probably think through, like, if I'm going to hire somebody to do this product design, they need to have these skills or software or whatever, right? So that's, I'd say, like, bucket number 1 that you can get to pretty quickly is, like, does this person have the competency and the skills to do the job that we need? Number 2, is it the right fit? So number 1 and number 2, it doesn't. So if you're interviewing for, let's just say a director of engineering, or if you're a director of engineering candidate, right? You got 15, 20 years of experience, something like that. And let's say you're on the sidelines, you're on the market, and you're interviewing for a mid-level position. Can you do the job? Yeah, probably. You have your PE, you got the design experience. But as a hiring manager, I'm thinking, like, is this the right fit? Does this align with where this person wants to go in their career? Or is it simply a Band-Aid scenario where they're just like, oh man, I need to get back into it. I'll do anything, right? And yeah, I got the skills for this. But just because you have step 1 doesn't mean that step 2 or bucket 2 is necessarily going to be aligned. And that kind of ties to, like, eventually we might get to, like, hey, how do you retain top talent? How do you avoid bad hires? Number 2 that I'm talking about here, aligning fit, is one of the best proactive ways that you can do to avoid a bad hire, meaning make sure you align the person's career goals and interests with the position that you're actually hiring for. So can you do the job isn't sufficient, necessary but insufficient. Okay. And then number 3, and this is the piece that, like, everyone likes to talk about, is, like, I put it in a broad bucket of culture, right? Everyone wants to align culture, and everyone has their own definition for it. You could ask 100 different people what culture means, and you could get 100 different answers. But I've boiled it down to, like, do they like you? That's what they're interviewing for. Like, do I like this person? All right, so if you have step 1, step 2 cleared, what's it going to be like to work with them? Do we see the world the same way? Do we have a similar communication style where there's going to be congruency in the way that we're going to approach projects, the way that we're going to approach handling challenges with a particular client or whatever it is? So I think consciously or subconsciously, hiring managers are thinking, like, do I like this person? Do I like this guy? Do I like this girl? Like, is she going to fit on the team? Or is he going to fit on the team? And what's it going to be like to work with them? So I think all 3 have to align in order for you to land in your next opportunity. So that's a long-winded way of answering your question. Hopefully this is where you wanted to go with this. But to summarize it, can you do the job? Number 2, is it the right fit? And number 3, do they like you?
Absolutely. And that's a great springboard, Steve. I think I'm going to turn it over to you first, because I think what you're going to talk about is going to be great.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'm going to work a little bit backwards. Going on your last one, the culture fit. I think that is often thrown around as, like the trendy thing to look for, but most people don't really understand or know how to execute on figuring that out. From a hiring manager's perspective, one of the actions that we've done in the past that has helped us a lot is really just to take them out for a nice long lunch right after we're finished with the interview. And you invite their potential peers, their potential leadership, and then even some cross-functional team people to all get in a group, have a lunch, and then basically you're just shooting the shit. You're not talking about a prolonged interview type subjects. You're just getting to know them and seeing if they mesh well with general conversation that is not related to the job itself. Mm-hmm. And I found that really lowers their defenses incredibly, and they will be more comfortable and open up, and you will see a lot more that is more unprepared, and you'll be able to identify if they are going to be a great fit or not. And there's been candidates that we brought in. I'm like, man, these are solid candidates. Everything looks great. We go to lunch and they are so awkward. They don't mesh well. They start blaming other people in their general conversations about like their experiences, and you're like, oh, really? Okay, let's talk a little more about that. And you really find out kind of what kind of person they are. Just so working backwards, I wanted to hit that because it's something that has been a huge, gigantic help on my side as a hiring manager.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a great tactic, great technique. I like the lunch idea, and maybe I can tie the comment that you made about the candidates blaming and being negative about whatever previous employers. So like one thing I was thinking about going into this, like whenever we prepare a candidate for an interview, it's not scripted. We don't give them the answers to the test or anything like that. Not that I would even know them, but there's two things. There's always two things that we advise every candidate on going into an interview as far as like mistakes that we hear over and over again. And again, these are like mistakes that we hear about happening at the entry level, somebody coming in, whatever, 2 years of experience, new graduate, they'll falter and make these mistakes. And believe it or not, we do a lot of executive level searches, CEOs, CFOs, COOs, and they'll make the same mistake. Number one is talking too much. They get into an interview and they ramble and they give long-winded answers. And that's usually a result of being unprepared, right? So they haven't thought through good questions. They haven't gone through any sort of an interview role play, and they'll get a simple question like, hey, what do you know about us? What do you know about the role? And they'll go on for 3 minutes and not really answer it, right? So that's number one. That happens all the time, unfortunately, right? Even at the C level where, that's kind of a different issue. An executive will really want to talk about themselves, sell themselves, talk about all the great things that they do. And like 18 minutes later, it's like, we're not having much of a conversation here. So that's number one, is talking too much, giving long-winded answers. And then number two is saying negative things about a previous employer or a previous boss. And they don't even know that they're doing it sometimes. Like it's very inadvertent. You'll ask them, and the way that this usually comes up is like, hey, I saw, in 2016, you were at this company for about a year, 2016, 2017, like, kind of a short stop on your resume. What ended up happening there? And then it'll just be the boss did this, the boss did that, the company did this, they didn't support me. And it's just like blame, all. And then that immediately they think they're giving a good reason, a good rationale for making a move. They're answering the question, but they're inadvertently submarining their chance at the job because they're being negative. And like that's just a universal, like unattractive quality and trait in an interview. I mean, everyone's experienced it if you've ever interviewed.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's an immediate turnoff.
Yes.
I myself have bombed interviews with those two things, and I learned the hard way because I'm a rambler, and that will happen. It's not so much that I won't be prepared, but I'll just over talk. So I think that's great advice not to do that.
Do you think that comes from nerves?
And then
was it nerves?
I just love to talk.
Okay.
Yeah, Steve knows
excited.
this. I run him over all the time. So I'm gonna point out that that's good, and I'm gonna stop talking about it. And then the being negative, even though I'm not a completely negative person, and I was trying to frame it as this is what I've experienced, and if I was to work with you, it's something that I would like to see done better, and that would be awesome. But that does a couple things. It's a negative, which wasn't quite framed properly, so it just instantly becomes a negative in their mind. And then you're telling them ahead of time what you've experienced in the past and that you better not do it. it just comes across wrong, I think.
Yeah, and there's an art form to that, right? There's probably some nuance in that response, but yeah, I think the biggest thing that you want to avoid is just the overt blaming, right? About like company and product and strategy and boss, and we didn't get along and we didn't see things eye to eye, and like those are the things that I think leave the breadcrumbs and set the table for like future, like, oh, what's it going to be like to work with this guy, right? And why did he have so many disagreements with his previous bosses? There might be a common thread there.
Yeah. You might follow up with hey, this occurred. Here's how we worked on it and came to an agreement for the betterment of the company and everything and the team, right? That might be a good way to do that.
Yeah. The other thing I would add too, I think the ultimate antidote to that is humility, right? Just a heavy dose of humility. And that's not self-blaming. You don't have to be self-deprecating or anything like that. But I think if you can add a good dose of humility into those responses, that's the antidote. That's universally attractive versus the flip side is universally unattractive blaming, right? But if you can add like a certain level of like, hey, you know what? I think it was probably a misunderstanding, disagreement, and that's on me as far as like being able to better understand, taking better notes in the meeting, and maybe asking clarifying questions. I thought we're going this way. You thought we're going this way, but I didn't do a good enough job of confirming that. Probably could have done that. And then now you're getting into like, hey, that's something that I learned. And now I can apply that to the skill set, the communication, the experience that we're going to have moving forward in this opportunity, whatever. Right. So I think like, and again, anyone listening to this, like do your best and people can pick up on false humility. So don't try to fake it. If you can genuinely, sincerely have humility in your responses, like it's going to take you a long way and people are going to be very receptive to that on the other side.
So you the first step you actually mentioned the filter of do they have the skills, and in my experience, yes, they have to have the fundamental skills, or they have to showcase that they've learned those skills, right? And that's going to be your degree or your PE, if to that level. If I understand everything there is on PEs, because I am not one, but I think a lot of that is, do they have the ability to learn new skills? Because, in my industry, I do deal with a lot of plastics, and that is not taught in school at all. Well, except for a couple universities. And I know going in that 80% of my candidates are not going to understand plastic injection at all. And so I have to really dig into, okay, how good of a learner are they? How have they showcased that they've learned new technical skills and how they've overcome new challenges and stuff like that. So while I do agree 100% that you have to have a core fundamental set of skills, I think it's even more important your ability to learn the new skills, and how you can communicate that to your prospective company. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Yeah, because I think especially the roles, if you're talking about, or the roles that you're talking about, are the engineering type positions. See?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So they're like probably your baseline qualifier is like, do they have a degree in mechanical engineering, industrial engineering, or something like that, right? That speaks to the way that they think, right? Because no amount of training, or myself, I have a marketing degree, right? I would never be able to pick up on that stuff. It would never translate. So to your point, and I think the benefit of interviewing engineers, and what I enjoy about working with engineers in the interview process, is like there's one common thread and through line that you all have that you learned in school, is your ability to solve problems, right? The ability to look at something and say, okay, we're going to solve this problem, whether it's a team or individually or whatever. So like that's the stuff that I would be looking for, is like, okay, they don't have direct industry experience, fine. How do they learn? And tell me about how you solve problems and what your thought process is. And then you can take that and you can distill it like, okay, this is going to work. I can train them on this. I can train them on that. But I can't train them on their ability to solve problems and walk through like what their thought process is, because that's what you want, right? Especially if they don't have direct industry experience. Like you want them to say, okay, I've done A, B, C, D, E, F. This is what I've already tried. This is what I've learned. This is what's not going to work. Steve, what do you think? Where do we got to go next from this? I'm just thinking from a problem solving standpoint. You want them to bring you what they've already done, and then what the proposed solutions are, options A, B, and C, for example. So I think that's a great point, and that's especially applicable to anybody in the engineering field.
Yeah, awesome. Jake, do you have anything to follow up with that?
Yeah, I like to hone in the culture fit. That the skills are great, but working with somebody is in my mind is pretty much the biggest deal, or I guess deal breaker, because it kind of puts a stop to everything else. And people can say, oh, I can set all of my emotions and how I feel about someone or something on the side, and we're just going to be robots and get through this. But I have yet to see or identify any of those robots in real life. And it shows up in the culture, in the way we do business, and our productivity, and in everything, and the team dynamic and the morale. So even if you can be that robot, most people can't. So identifying the culture the culture fit is really important. Now, how does a potential candidate showcase that so that then the hiring manager can put 2 and 2 together and say, aha, this is a great culture fit. Love it. The lunch is a great idea, but how does a candidate prepare? And I can give you my quick 1-2 on how I would do it, but I'd like to know your thoughts as well. Go for it.
Yeah. Just had a train of thought there that I wanted to run with. So number one is that you have to be yourself, right? No amount of preparation is ever going to help you if it's not a culture fit. So you have to be genuinely yourself. There's no way around that, right? So that's the first baseline element that's absolutely necessary. And then number 2, like as far as the culture fit, so I simplified and said, okay, do we like each other, right? Do we get along? Do we see the world similarly? Now, if you were to go like a layer beneath that, if I'm, the company or if the candidate here, I would try to look for like a common thread between like your passion, your interest, the professional goals that the company has, and then what do they do to align the two? So, for example, like I had an interview or a podcast with a company, a gentleman who works for he's an executive at an architect and engineering firm. Okay. So he had talked about some of the work that they were doing for designing and engineering a new building for like it was. I'm going to miss this up a little bit. Hopefully, get the point across that it was for like a bunch of entrepreneurs who come from like kind of low income areas, right? So they built buildings and designed buildings for entrepreneurs who came from disadvantaged backgrounds. And that was their way of like utilizing the skills that they have in order to give back to a community that maybe necessarily wouldn't have that advantage, right? So you had this connection of culture. You had professional skills and experiences aligning with like that feeling that you feel like, oh man, I did something good for the world, and you give back and you can utilize your skills and experiences to do that. I think the term that's used that you could look into is it's a Greek word called techne, Teckne, and there's like an accent there, but it's a Greek word. So the example that was given was like a bunch of like automotive engineers. The story is that a bunch of automotive engineers went to a soup kitchen, right? That's kind of like a community service thing, like give back to the community and go to a soup kitchen, and hey, that's part of our company culture. But these automotive engineers looked at the soup kitchen arrangement and said, whoa, we can do this better. It can be more effective. And they rearranged everything. They restructured the line. They restructured the soup distribution and the way that the entire system was set up. They re-engineered it to be more effective. Now we have cultural alignment, right? Now you got a story as a company, as a hiring manager, that like when the candidate says, hey, tell me about the culture of the company, this is the way that we do it. Right. So you're taking just simply giving back, which is good. We shouldn't frown upon that, but to give back in a way that aligns with the mission and the vision of your company. If you can do that on a regular basis and tell that story, now you got something that's going to attract the people that you want in your company. And culture really starts to have some traction and have some weight versus like culture sometimes will get confused with like, hey, we get to bring our dogs into work. Or, we do yoga at noon and we have happy hours. That's bullshit, right? That's not culture.
That's
a perk.
That's total. Those are activities to do together that maybe perhaps you can start expanding the culture within those, but those are not the culture themselves. Couple of things I got from that, which is
I'm sorry, I really got good. Rolling on that. Hopefully I wasn't.
Dude,
too much.
So good, so good.
Yeah.
One was I just want people to know, like, let the being yourself in the interview determine whether they're going to see you as a fit, instead of you thinking that you're hitting on the things that they would like to hear you say to be the fit.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So this just goes back to being yourself. It's a simple concept, but the culture. So these days, there is no reason that you can't kind of figure out the general culture of the company that you're going to be interviewing for ahead of time. Okay. And this is just a tactic for you guys looking for jobs here. Write down, figure out the culture. Okay. There's too much information online for you not to be able to get it. Go figure that out. Then write yourself down some stories about yourself and your experiences that could align with that culture, the true, authentic stories, the things that you've been through, that then you can talk to during the interview to hit this culture piece. Okay. And you'll know when it comes up. You'll know when the questions come up. You'll know when to weave them in. But it's a very tactical thing, but it works very well. And you could even integrate these kinds of things into your resume. You have what you've accomplished. You're demonstrating your skills. You're demonstrating who you are. And for each line item that you have on your resume, have a culture story behind that. I mean, you could even do that with stats. I helped produce 20% additional revenue for 2022 in this department, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's great. They're going to be interested in seeing that and talking about it. There's a culture story in there somewhere that as you did that, this is what came out, and these are the things we overcame, and here's what we forged, and the partnerships that we built, and you're going to be able to tie that in. So just have a little story underneath all those line items.
Yeah, I wanted to hit something back on the being yourself topic. If you feel that you have to change the presentation of yourself to a prospective employer, they're going to expect you to be that way all the time. And so you're setting yourself up for failure, because now you're going to have to operate as that version that is off the base of your core. And that takes a lot more energy. And then so that energy gets depleted out of your system. And now you have less energy to put into the work itself. And so you're going to be less effective, and you're just not going to be as happy and fulfilled and successful in the career because of it.
Yeah. You're right. It's exhausting, right? Trying to be somebody else is exhausting. Versus and that's kind of the irony of it, especially if someone's early on in their career and they feel like they got to put their best foot forward and they got to interview and they got to say all the right things in the interview and they got to really try to turn themselves into somebody different. You're right. Eventually the real you is going to show up, and then, you're going to have misalignment. And B, the irony is that if you're yourself, it's actually more attractive. Yes, you need to be professional. You need to be prepared. You need to show up on time, all of those things. But the hiring managers on the other side of the table are going to be able to smell what your intent is, right? So if your intent is being yourself, and you're going to be more relaxed, and it's actually way more attractive than trying to be somebody else and trying to get into, kind of this stereotypical interview mode. We've all hired people. We've all been on the other side of the table. We all know the person that's going to be more attractive is the person that's relaxed, the person that's themselves, and the person that's kind of you can have an organic, free-flowing conversation with, versus someone that feels like they just need to, give all the right answers.
Yeah, because someone who's relaxed is going to project a lot more confidence in what they're saying anyways. So, you could not even be the most confident, quote unquote, person out there, but if you're relaxed and you're just fluid in your conversation, you're going to give off that perception of confidence, and people are going to not be like, oh yeah, she was really nervous in the interview, or he was distracted a lot. They're going to be like, yeah, they're very confident in their presentation, and I really felt that I got to know who they were, and I think they're a good fit.
Yeah. I mean, I would say intent has a smell, and when your intent is to be sincere and honest and upfront, that's a really nice cologne, right? That's the best cologne, top of the line, top shelf cologne that people are going to be attracted to. Then, of course, if the other end, it's okay, you're nervous, you're trying to be somebody else, or even if you have nefarious intent, that's a musty, nasty smell that is going to repel people away from you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't give you a chance to break through their perception of you right away, because they have to make an educated guess, the hiring manager does, on what does this mean? If I can't get a peek behind the curtain and see this person being authentic, what does that mean? It could mean that they don't even want the job. It could mean that they think they're underqualified or are nervous about it. It could mean they think that, a million things. It's you got to give it, right? So that they can understand the truth.
Yeah. So speaking of being your authentic self, you still need to market yourself. So how can someone be authentic but still present themselves as marketable for the role that they're applying for?
Ooh, yeah,
that's a good question. That's a good question. Well, I'd say the baseline, when I think about, like, it sounds like a lot of the audience here is engineers, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I'd say, like, the number one thing to do to market yourself is to really work on the soft skills, the stuff that we were talking about before, right? So that ties into the other components of the interview process. So, like, skills, you might be like a rock solid engineer. You may have just got your PE. You are good to go. But on the soft skill side, the communication side, you're probably thinking, hey, I got some work to do there. That's the number one thing. And then how do you get out in front of that is going to see people, going to events, it doesn't have to be as formal as, Toastmasters Club or taking a course. Maybe that's for you, right? If you want to sign up for public speaking courses and stuff like that, that could be tremendously beneficial. But if you're at a company today, maybe you start volunteering and raising your hand to go to customer meetings, or maybe you start doing a webinar presentation on a particular topic, right? To internally within your company, or there's always room, right? Depending on the role that you're in, you go to your boss and say, hey, this is a skill that I want to develop. And now we're going to get into, like, retaining employees. If you can pour into that person, so now I'm talking on both sides, hiring manager and employee or team member. If you can pour into that person, so if this engineer is like, hey, I want to market myself, I want to get better, I want to sharpen the sword from a communication skill standpoint, they go to their boss and say, I'm looking for more opportunities to do this. I recognize the self-awareness, again, universally attractive, self-awareness to recognize this is a skill I'm not great at, but I want to get better at it. Can you help me get there? What opportunities are there within the company, within our client base, where maybe I can give a 3-minute presentation, or maybe you can bring me into the next client call. I can sit there, I can learn, I can ask some questions. I don't know how involved engineers get in those types of processes, but that would be the best way to do it. So now you do it a couple times, you get comfortable, and they see that you're getting better at it. It starts little by little, right? You're not going to give a 45-minute presentation, but can you show up to a meeting? And can you introduce yourself? And, you talk for 30 seconds. And then, you kind of work your way up to, we do a ton of work in the energy performance contracting space. And the best engineers are the ones that ride along with the account executives to a school board meeting and make a presentation to superintendents and facilities directors. And they can stand up there, they can give the presentation, and they can answer questions. They can have the dialogue back and forth. Those are the types of individuals that have gained that experience, gained that confidence through reps. They didn't start that way, right? Especially with the engineering background, they kind of worked their way gradually into it. So that's where I would start, as an engineer. Just look for small ways that you can start getting face time, presentation time, whether it's, virtually doing presentations or whether it's in person.
Yeah, and I would say even for engineering students, there's opportunities at your university to join a speech club or some other types of events or speech classes, and put yourself out there in those safe scenarios to make the mistakes and to stumble and put in those reps that you need to be more proficient.
Yeah, you certainly don't want to do it in the middle of an interview. So, I mean, it's okay if that happens. That's life, baby. Just keep going. But
just do more interviews.
Give yourself the shot. Yeah, exactly. Take the reps, man. Do the reps. That's all I got to say about it. That is great advice. Just do it a lot.
Yeah. They, I have a lot of sayings, and one of the other ones that I just thought of here for this scenario is reps remove doubt. Reps remove doubt. So the more reps that you get, more confident you are. You're going to remove that doubt in yourself.
The more evidence you stack for yourself that you are indeed good at this, of course, that's going to raise that confidence bar. That's awesome. I think another marketing yourself topic in this day and age would be related to social media. And I don't want to skip over that one because I think it's important. But Jim, you could tell us, like, hey, when a candidate comes through, or you're just hearing about somebody, I think among one of the first actions that most people take is going to be to look them up. And so I think it's important for a LinkedIn profile to be polished and definitely not detract or put any doubt in someone's mind about you right away. So are there things you look for in that regard?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And honestly, like, those are like baseline items at this point, right? If you don't have a profile picture, or if it's fuzzy, or if it's like, 7 years old from you in high school or whatever, like like all of that stuff shouldn't even be in play. You should have a professional looking picture. And I mean, have your friend, take it on your iPhone, right? You have no excuses for not having a professional looking headshot in your LinkedIn. And then, yeah, just generally have your LinkedIn filled out, right? Have the fields filled out, have your experience updated. So like, yeah, I mean, it's very easy for someone to dismiss your LinkedIn profile if you don't have a picture, you have a poor picture, or you don't have an updated profile. That just tells me that you're probably not serious about looking for a new position or a new opportunity. So if this is for somebody that wants to put themselves out there, wants to market themselves, wants to either, land their first job out of school or, take the next step in their career, those are table stake items that absolutely need to be in play for you to be taken seriously by, someone like myself or, other hiring managers that are looking for someone like you.
So what would you say are your top red flags on social media profiles, be it LinkedIn especially, but I mean even others?
Yeah, I struggle with this because I'm personally not on a whole lot of social media myself. So I think at minimum, so even if someone doesn't have an updated profile picture, their LinkedIn profile isn't fully updated, that's still not a red flag for me. So a yellow flag, it's probably not helping their case. But red flags would be like, I Google everybody, right? I just do a simple Google search. There's no science to this. And then, yeah, you generally scroll through. Like if you see some stuff on Facebook that's less than professional, if you, unfortunately see some arrest records and stuff like that, that's all public information. So those would probably be red flags for me. And yeah, that's all you're doing is you are just doing a quick overview. I'm not going to page 2. No one goes to page 2 on Google. But page 1 is anything showing up on page 1, as far as those red flag things. And then, but yeah, that just kind of like keeps you in the game at that point. If you don't have anything really terrible in your background and you don't have some just awful, inappropriate pictures, those are the things that I'm looking for. So as long as I'm not seeing that, okay, now we're going to the next step.
It's like the old school way of, the interviewees in the office with the hiring manager, and then they've commissioned somebody to walk outside and go look at the car, and then they go look in the window, and they're like, they see it just completely trashed. The car's dilapidated, nothing's clean. There's banana peels in the back seat. They're like, okay. That's sign. Kind of the test nowadays on social media. So just don't allow it to be a detractor. That's what I tell everybody, base level stuff, just like you said, Jim. So I don't know if someone Googled my name, they might find some stuff there on the first page of Google. Maybe my a funny story. Just, I'm sorry to totally interrupt the whole show, but when I was like early 20s, right? I just get hired for my first engineering job. Actually, this is in Redding, California. If anybody wants to look it up, I was out with my brother Zane, messing around in the car out in the rural countryside, or it wasn't countryside, but it was very unpopulated. So we're like, okay, if there's no real risk of hurting anybody by zipping around in our sports car and maybe drifting a little bit, okay, cool, that sounds fun. So we're out there playing around. I managed to hit the only fire hydrant within 3 miles of this corner of this road. I plowed right over it, man, sheared the thing off, water's going everywhere. It's the funniest thing. It's still going to be there if you search 240SX or Nissan hits a fire hydrant or something like that. It's just, oh my God.
I would let that one pass. I wouldn't hold that against you. That's not good, but not bad. That's a perfect opener.
Thankfully, thankfully, my CFO forgave me too for the brown water that was created in his water system in his house because he lived nearby.
Oh, shoot. Okay, it gets worse.
He's all, Jake, was that you? And I'm like, unfortunately, yes. And it was a great story to tell every once in a while. So.
I still show people that news clip. Like, look at my brother.
Yeah, we should just post it. So marketing yourself. All right, back on track. Maybe we move to retention strategies. That's a very interesting topic to me. So I'd like to hear what you think about retention strategies, Jim. Yeah. And maybe we can tie it somehow back to the individual engineer here.
Yeah. Well, I think it ties back to culture. right? So if you're a leader and you want to retain your best people, I think it's really important that you define what your culture is, right? It does start in the interview process, right? Because you want to retain your best employees, and that does start at the beginning. Understanding your culture, defining your culture, and being very protective of it, right? That's the way that you're going to retain good people who are mutually aligned. Number two, it's not everything, but compensation matters. It really does. You got to be competitive. You should not be writing a blank check and just buying people and just every time someone comes to you and says, oh, I got the whole counteroffer situation. I'm, of course, very biased to this topic. But that's not a good retention strategy either, right? Being reactive versus you should be proactive. If you want to retain your best employees, be proactive in offering them compensation increases if it works with the budget, whether that's from a guaranteed base salary standpoint or offering them additional variable incentives, right? Based on performance metrics. So you're both winning at that time. But I think really the key with compensation is, yes, you got to be competitive and proactive about it. Do not wait for your best employees to come to you or just think, oh, they're good. We got them a good salary. They're good. If it makes sense, especially if this is someone in the top, 5% of your team, be proactive about it. Absolutely be proactive about compensation increases, whether that's fixed or variable. Number three is this goes back to the person that wanted to do more public speaking. So I'd say the other part is invest in the professional development of your team members. And ideally that would be proactive as well, because that's what I think team members, employees want to feel. If you got to go to your hiring manager and say, hey, I want to go to this course, I want this certification, I want to do that. That's awesome. And you agree to it, you find a budget for it. That's good. But what's better, what's great is you being proactive as a leader in the next quarterly review saying, hey, I think that we should put you into this course or taking a step back for a second, asking them, hey, what's important to you? What skills do you want to develop? How can we put you in a position to do that? So those would be three things. If we look at retention, I think being proactive is the common thread across all of it. So proactive in the interview process to retain culture and be very firm about the culture that you're trying to build and the people that you want to attract. Proactive around compensation increases, and then proactive around professional development. I'd say those are three things that if you're doing that, easier said than done, just like all the other things in life. A lot easier to talk about them than it is to do them. But if you can at least work one of those, two of those into your strategy as a leader, I think you're putting yourself in a good position so you avoid the, hey, boss, can I schedule a meeting with you? And then you got the 2-week notice thing coming. None of us want that from our best employees. We want to retain them, and you got to be proactive about it.
Hey, my fellow impactful engineers. If there's one thing that you could do to help out this community, is to keep listening to the podcast, but also if you found value in it, to share it with one person, give us a 5-star review, or even leave a text review. It'll only take a few seconds of your time. Find that person that you think could enjoy some of this or learn from it, and pass on the good word. Now back to the show.
I'd like to add a little bit to that. I 100% agree on all three of those. And I am very fortunate to be in a company that exercises all three of those. Awesome. And because of that, our retention is very good with engineering, which is amazing. But the other element that I think is important for those hiring managers or the leaders out there is when you have underperformers, you need to first, you always want to try to bring them up to the performance standards, right? You'll give them the opportunity to do that, work with them, because a lot of times it's leadership's fault that they're not performing, right? So you have to understand how you can change your approach to their development, and back to one of the points, right, is to offer that opportunity for them to grow and up their game. But there are individuals and times that they just aren't able to get up to that level that is required. And at that point, it is dragging the rest of the team down. And if they are kept on the team, you will lose your high performers because of that. They'll compare themselves, be like, hey, I'm doing all this great stuff, and this, Joe Blow over here is just skating by, and they make about the same salary, and they don't put any effort in. Why should I stay here? I'm going to go look for a higher performance team. So it is critically important for leadership to identify those scenarios, and after they've already exhausted the opportunities to develop those people, and frankly have the hard conversations and make the exits if necessary.
Yeah, I think I've heard it said that team members will often evaluate not so much what your expectations are, but what you'll tolerate.
Yes.
So tolerating a poor performer and keeping them on the team and just being okay with it, just kind of limping along, like everyone else is going to see that way more than what the expectations are.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
100%. Yep. I mean, just to be honest, I look around and think about that. I've been in companies where I look around and I see a lot of it, and I've been at companies where I look around and I don't see so much of it. But it's very noticeable. One thing I'll add is because our listeners are most likely going to be high performers, or they won't stick around to peel the wisdom out of our talks. So one thing that you can do to retain yourself, right? There's many things, but I'll add asking your manager how it is that your position makes revenue for the company. Okay. How do you contribute to the company making money? That's going to be one way that you can, first of all, I think a manager is going to be like, whoa, like they're thinking about this. That's kind of cool. And then you can say, all right, if that's the way that my position makes money, how do I amplify that? How do I gain some more skills here so that, I increase the likelihood that I do make the company money and that my position does remain viable? Or maybe even more than that, that I become a beacon, or our team becomes a beacon because of the activities that we're taking together. That can be one way to improve your ability to maintain your job. That jobs fluctuate, markets fluctuate. There's nothing that a company can do to guarantee you that you'll have a job. And if they do, they're lying, or they're way too optimistic and they just don't get it. Like, no one can guarantee you that you have a job, right? But they can guarantee you that they will do their best to make sure that the company wins. But you trying to be a part of that and actively seeking it is going to be good for you.
Yeah, if I could add to that, I know I talked on the retention strategy from a hiring manager standpoint, but I think from an employee standpoint, the best advice that I've heard and that I would apply is, if you've ever read Seth Godin's book Linchpin. Have you guys read that?
I haven't. It's on the list though.
Okay.
Nope.
Yeah, I mean that's probably, if someone's looking for a real tangible takeaway here, like write that book down and go get it. Like, that's probably the best thing you can do. Like, you're right. Sure, there's no guarantees, but if you put yourself in a position to be a linchpin within your organization, like if you're proactively solving problems and like thinking of ways that like maybe your boss hasn't thought of yet, or you're going beyond just doing your job. Like Seth Godin, the author, refers to it as like creating art, right? So you're not a machine. You're not just doing your job. You're not just clocking in. You're creating art, and you're going out of your way to step outside of what your normal job description is to help create and solve problems. So that's probably the best thing that you could do, is become a linchpin within your organization. So Steve, as you touched on earlier, like, layoffs happen, and how do you prevent yourself? Like, that's one of the best things that you could do. No guarantees, but you're putting yourself in a better position because now you're standing out, you're creating, and you're helping solve problems for the company that weren't necessarily on your plate, right? So it's an and. Right. It's like you got to do your job and create along the way.
Yeah. You're making yourself undeniably great at what you do, that it would be unreasonable for them to let you go.
Yep.
Yeah. When the time comes and they're all talking about layoffs and they've reached that point, who's going to get the nod? Is it going to be someone who goes, well, this person knows exactly how they make money for the company and they're actually getting really good at it? And then this person, it's just been here for a year. They do a great job, but they just know how to do the job. Who's on the target list first? Yeah. It's just what is. And I like to remind people and encourage them to live in what is and not what ought to be, right? Because a lot of people have the mindset of the company should go down in flames retaining its employees. And that's not going to be what is. Maybe that's an idealized version. Yeah. So just live in what is. But man, it's been a great conversation. We're coming up on time here where Steve and I are going to ask our final questions, some of which might have been answered already, but recaps are fine.
Sure.
And Steve, go ahead and shoot yours first.
Yeah. So Jim, I want to ask you, in your eyes, what makes an impactful engineer?
Yeah. Well, I'd probably just lean on, the comment previously, right? The ability to be a linchpin, right? The ability to proactively create and solve problems. And then also I would add the ability to communicate and compel clients and customers, right? So being able to have that combination of the technical skills, abilities, problem solving, and then also the persuasive communication and personality skills. That would be the most effective combination of skills that an engineer can bring to the table.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I had a feeling that you're going to lead right into that. So
and
Jake,
certainly create an impactful career, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, mine's action based. What's the first action that someone could take that would put them in the most likely spot to get to the point of becoming that linchpin?
Well, maybe just a real baseline item there is like LinkedIn stuff that we were talking about before. Like that'll certainly help if you're on this journey and you're going to start proactively looking for something. Make sure everything's updated. Make sure everything's professional. And then just overall putting yourself in a position. I think this is the theme: is to hone new skills and to be proactive about it, and to be able to put yourself in a position with your boss, with your company, where you become indispensable.
Yeah, and just take that action to make that happen, I would say.
Yes.
No one's going to do it for you.
100%.
Awesome. Jim, it's great having you on. We really appreciate it. I'm sure the audience does too. Lots of good stuff in there.
Thank you.
Thanks,
This was
Jim.
awesome. Appreciate it.